Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Julie Navarez. I'm the practice director for the investment manager vertical here at Consero. My team and I work with hedge fund managers and private equity and venture capital firms to provide finance and accounting services specifically for the management company entities. I've had the pleasure of working for Brian as an outsourced partner for nearly 9 years now. And over that time, we've built a strong partnership. And Brian, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you today and looking forward to discussing the value and impact our collaboration has had. And I hand it over to you for a quick intro, and then we can get started.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you very much. So hi, everybody. Brian Falahee here. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Compliance Officer at Delta Global. I've been in this position for about 2 years now. Prior to that, I was the CFO of Whale Rock Capital, which is a long-short TMT fund up in Boston. And then prior to that, I was at Goldman Sachs, and really dating myself here, I was started my career at Arthur Andersen in the hedge fund audit practice. So happy to join you today, and yeah, happy to field any questions on Consero.
Sure. So you referenced your time at Delta Global. You partnered with Consero after joining them in 2023. What key challenges did you anticipate facing, and how did you see Consero helping to address those?
Yeah, when you're launching a new fund, there's a million things that you have to do. And each one of those things could potentially impact your launch. So what was great about partnering with Consero, and I think, Julie, you mentioned it before, I had worked with Consero in the past at my prior firm, and I had worked with them before they were Bridgeview CFO Solutions, which was an amazing firm that was started by Diana McDonough, who was an amazing mentor actually for me in the hedge fund space. I've known Diana for over 20 years, and she's a fantastic person, and really built a great business. But with that partnership, comes a lot of trust, a lot of knowing how each other, your work patterns, how people like to work together. So was able to, with a very high degree of confidence, know that when we hired Consero, the parts of the management company that we're going to dive into in a little bit, we're going to be handled appropriately. It was just one less thing that I really had to do. So it was important to me to get our agreements finalized, and to almost put you guys to work, because I really did view and still do view you guys as an extension of our team here at Delta Global.
Mm-hmm. That's how we like to be seen. Absolutely. We don't want to be operating in a silo. We really want to be an extension of your team and a true partner. I would also say that, starting with Consero early on helps establish best practices in accounting and reporting and your controls from day one. And really, I think, frees you up to focus on investment and strategy rather than all the setup and the nuts and bolts of setting up a GL and putting processes, procedures in place, hiring, and so forth.
Yeah, no, you make a great point. The initial startup, it's so important. It really does, if done correctly and in a deliberate manner, will create way less work in the future. But at the same time, it's probably the most frantic and crazy you'll ever be. For me in particular, I made a mistake of not hiring a trader and a CFO we tried, but it's a tough market out there. So I really was a one-man shop to try to implement and onboard everything. So getting Consero up and running and having them help out on the management company books and records, as well as the HR side, really did help.
Mm-hmm. And having Consero handle the financial and HR capabilities, I think, also affects your ability to focus on scalability to support expansion without needing to build out a large internal finance team, which is often the goal of many of our clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk a bit about how partnering with Consero has given you peace of mind around separation of duties and why that's so important?
Yeah, absolutely. As a former CFO, now a chief operating officer, I really view the role as something where you're trying to build a foundation for your firm. And how successful that's going to be will be, played out over time based upon the fact of can that foundation, that operational infrastructure support your firm, hopefully as your firm grows, right? That's why we all join hedge funds. We're all here to hopefully grow and have long careers. So if you're, and I know we all know funds like this that are constantly ripping out and putting in new service providers or new software, et cetera. That creates a ton of work. It's tough. You lose history, and it's just not great from an operational point of view. Sometimes you're forced to do it, but hopefully, if you set things up correctly the first time, you won't have to do that. I think something that's been forced upon all of us, and it's a good thing. Post Madoff, operational due diligence really exploded. So best practices as it relates to certain things at a hedge fund has become largely standardized. I would include in that one of the biggest things that everyone gets asked is controls around cash, right? Everyone's been in operational due diligence. They all want to know, how does cash move in and out of the fund? Are you using your fund administrator to help with that? How many people internally have to sign off? Is it systematic? Meaning, do you log in with a secure token, or are you, faxing over signed documents? Things like that. So that's been a real, I view as a plus for the hedge fund and the hedge fund industry. Unfortunately, those same controls largely have not ported over to the management company side. And, I've asked about this. I've asked some allocators why they haven't pushed on this. And one comment that always stuck with me was, well, if you want to steal from yourself, we really don't care. We just want to protect our cash, which I kind of laughed about. And I think he was saying, tongue in cheek. But as a CFO, I really wanted to be able to present to my partners and say, hey, here's the management company. Here are the controls we put in place around it. I actually had one of my partners say to me at one point, I don't mean to say I don't trust you. I said, time out. Trust has nothing to do with this. This is a best practice. This is about setting up controls on, the management company cash, which is your founder's cash, that really are the exact same as the level of controls that you would have at for your fund cash. So it's a long way of saying, having a firm like Consero, having a fund admin for your management company, it enables you to get the same level of controls that you would put on your fund cash at your management company. What it's also doing is giving almost, real time, I would call it probably T+1 transparency to the management company. You see the books and records being on a, independent web interface. It's being managed by Consero. I have no ability, and neither does anyone on our firm, to log into that and to put, in any kind of accounting entries into that system. And I can give, and I do give my partners access to that. So they have real-time transparency into that, and then explaining to them, hey, when we ever want to move cash out of this account, we have to involve Consero. They're the ones who are posting it. We have no ability to post it. We review and approve it, and they release it. So it's, I think it was probably day one in my first accounting class where they explained, if you have control over cash and control over the books and records, you have no controls. So segregating out those controls, it's a basic function. But I think it's super important, and it's actually something that a lot of founders at funds just aren't aware of, is how unsecure their management company is and how much faith they're putting in people. And again, it's not about trust. This is about a best practice. You would never have that. You would never be able to sit across from an operational due diligence and say, "Hey, trust me, I'm not going to steal your cash." Why would you do the same thing for your management company?
That's a great insight into reducing exposure to fraud and financial mismanagement. Of course, as we provide independent oversight on the financial transactions, and I think one of the most important aspects of this is providing the investors, the LPs, with confidence that the management company operations meet the same level of fiduciary standards that you do on the fund side.
Yep, absolutely.
You partnered with Consero to start building out the F&A function with Delta Global prior to fund launch. Can you talk a little bit more about what efficiencies you gained by bringing in the outsourced provider from the outset?
Yeah, again, we touched on this briefly, but setting up things the right way, right off the bat really does save a lot of work in the future. So, we've talked about how Consero manages the books and records of the management company. That said, everybody views different, different expenses differently. So being able to work with Consero and say, "Hey, for this vendor, we'd like it in this bucket. These are the 5 buckets we want to see, or these are the 20 buckets we want to see. Here are the mappings between these vendors. This one goes here, this one goes into, rent, and this one goes into compensation, etc." So being able to really customize that and to get everybody on board, your founders included, because again, they're going to be the ones who are ultimately looking at this. One of the worst things is to go and run your books and records for 2 to 3 years. Finally, one of your founders says, "Hey, I'd like to see that," and then they come in and say, "Wait, I don't like any of these buckets. Redo it." So now you're going in and redoing 3 years worth of management company financials. Nobody wants to deal with that. The bill pay efficiency, we haven't really touched on this, but this is something that to be honest, I'm not even sure what funds do if they're not using bill.com. But this has been something that could be a real-time suck, and it just becomes incredibly efficient. So we get periodic emails throughout the week. We pick which days we want to see them. Details all of the bills that are being posted in bill.com, posted by Consero. My CFO will go in and review those bills for accuracy and then approve them. And then I go in and do my approval. And then the bills are paid and released. Another, again, issue that we run into, I'm sure everyone on this call has run into this, is hey, this invoice is outstanding. Can you please track it down? And now you're spending 30 to 40 minutes of your day trying to track down a paid invoice. Instead, we're just hitting forward, sending it over to the Consero team, and they're very quickly able to turn that around and show you where that bill has been paid. So, all of those things just lead to efficiencies. Again, we view Consero as a partner and extension of our team. Without this, I think it obviously takes, a lot of time if you were trying to do it internally. So it's that perfect combination of, is it going to take a lot of your time? Yes. Are you going to be able to produce a superior work product to what Concero's doing? Personally, I would say no, I wouldn't be able to replicate. So then that becomes a no-brainer. And, it's something that really helps us and saves us money in the long run, because if not, we would probably have to hire another person to handle this.
That all makes sense. A couple of points I'll add to when you spoke about being able to map vendors and so forth from the beginning. And one of the things that we can bring to the table is, kind of our best practices of pre-built financial processes, chart of accounts, and so forth. But then we can, of course, customize that to meet your business's needs. The other thing you touched on was being in the scenario of your investors 3 years down the road wanting some kind of different reporting or a different view. And sometimes what I see is people start out with a less robust solution like a QBO, but it's got limitations in terms of dimensionality. And so starting with a more robust package from the outset lets us be more proactive and act with foresight into what you will need down the road as the firm grows, as AUM grows, and be able to build the foundation for that more complex reporting that will come later on from the beginning.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really, really interesting point there. And that's the fact that you guys are experts in this space. So being able to see potential obstacles that are going to come up, maybe years down the road.
Mhm.
And I don't think anybody goes to school to become an expert in hedge fund management company reporting. That's something you really do have to pick up over time. And some lessons you just have to learn the hard way. So if you're doing it yourself, that's going to be a lesson that, yeah, you're going to have to learn the hard way. But by being able to get good advice, like from people at Consero, that can really help solve some headaches.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, we haven't touched too deeply on how our model works in terms of the relationship and how that works in the day to day. But one of the things that happens a lot is people, especially earlier in the life cycle of a fund or emerging managers, will come to us and ask, what do you see my peers doing? What are other people doing to solve this, to solve that? And so we have the advantage of working with a variety of investors from all different sizes, emerging managers up to multi-billion-dollar, multi-strategy shops. And so we have a nice broad view of what your peers are doing and what happens as you grow down the road.
Absolutely. Yep.
Um, how does the operational relationship with Consero compare to other vendors that you work with?
Um, it's interesting. Like I said, in my prior fund, I spent 16 years there, and as we grew as a fund, we grew our team, and as part of that, I delegated a lot of the responsibilities of a lot of the providers. So now I'm at a smaller team again, and I'm the point person for a lot of these. I would say the majority of our service providers. And I've really been surprised at the kind of evolution in the service provider space. And by that I mean it seems like a lot of these models now are um, a standardized model where each provider will have a certain playbook. And what I mean by that is they've pretty much broken down every single request that a client can make and says, okay, this is how you deal with that. Now, what that usually means is you're pushing a lot back on the client. Oh, you'd like to do that? Well, we only do that on Fridays. Oh, you want to answer to that? Well, you got to submit this ticket. Oh, you had a new employee getting onboarded? Well, don't you know that you had to fill out this form within 31 days of their hire date, even though we just hired them 2 days ago? Like, well, we don't care, right? You have to fit within our playbook. That makes a lot of sense if you're running a business. I get why they do that because it gives you the ability to scale, and it gives you the ability to hire inexperienced people, because as long as they have the binder of here's the playbook, they just have to follow it and it's fine. They can just sit down and start working right away. Why it's not great for us is we're almost universally operating in a small environment where almost every hedge fund is a small, lean team. So to now tell me, okay, I use dozens of service providers and I have to memorize the playbook for dozens of providers to know how this stuff works and to how to get things done, that becomes a real issue, right? It's the classic, hey, I have a problem, service provider help solve it for me. And really that's been getting pushed back to say, no, you as client, if you want your problem solved, we will help you, but only if you do X, Y, and Z. So that gets to be challenging. The second downside to that is the person that you're largely dealing with on the other end of the phone and or the ticket or the Zoom call, a lot of times they're not the experienced professionals that maybe you dealt with 10 to 15 years ago. They're more junior folks. They're almost universally all working from home, which totally different webinar here about debating working from home or not. But my general feeling on it is it's horrible for junior employees to be doing that. I think it's great for more seasoned professionals. But when you're just starting out in the industry, you want to learn from other people. And if you're working from home, that's really tough to do. So if those are the people you're facing off versus, yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to see not as good of a work product coming out of those service providers. The things that, to contrast that, the things that I've really always appreciated with Consero is the fact of, it's very much a customized model. So, yep, you do have standardized procedures, you do have standardized work offerings and products, but it's very much a, hey, can we talk about this? Can you pick up the phone and can I explain to you my problem and you give me your opinion? And that only works too. That's the second thing that I appreciate with Consero is if you're talking to a seasoned professional who knows more than you do. I've always asked all of my providers, I used to say when you walked into my office, but nobody comes into the office anymore. So now I guess I would have to say when we do a Zoom, that you really act not like a service provider, but act like you're part of the company, act like you're part of Delta Global. And if you see me doing something, if I say to you, hey, please do X, Y, Z, I think one of the best things you can ever hear from a service provider is, sure, we can do that, but are you sure you want to? Because by doing that, you might create these 3 issues down the road. Even if I disagree, it really shows when somebody comes back and says that to me, it really shows they're incredibly vested. They understand me, they understand my business, and they are really knowledgeable about what we're trying to do. And that's what you want. There's nobody who sits in, any one of any seat at a hedge fund who thinks that they know everything and they're always right. There's 2 types of people in hedge fund land: the humble and soon to be humble. So you have to know your audience, but also understand that there are smarter people out there. And if somebody can prevent me from making a mistake, that's invaluable.
Love that. I mean, I think the best vendor relationships, we've discussed this before, they involve guidance, not just execution. It's more than just processing requests. It's really trying to integrate with your operations, aligning with your goals, and becoming an extension of your team. And, having that dedicated account manager that, as you say, is a more senior, seasoned person, I think really goes a long way towards advancing those goals.
Yeah, I mean,
Also,
you're doing this job. I mean, this is your guy's job. You do this 24/7.
mhm.
Hopefully, if when you work with Consero, I don't have to think about this too often. And when it does come up, it's a smaller part of what I'm doing. So being able to talk to a professional who understands us and cares enough, it's very easy to just say, sure, you want to do that? Boy, that's a dumb request, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it because it'll shut up the client. That's the easy way, right? It's harder to say, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Like that can create issues, but clients really, really do appreciate it.
Agreed. I also have to laugh a little bit about no service providers come to see you anymore because I did come to see you in
You
November
did,
in New
you
York.
did. It was very nice. It was one of the few visitors we get now in this new world.
Love getting out to see people. Um, if you were to quantify the ROI of your partnership with Consero, which metrics would you call out as being most significant?
Um, I would say number one is the efficiency and the time save. You're saving an enormous amount of time by not having to set up books and records, by not having to become an expert in various different things. So that is really important. The avoidance of mistakes is also something that it's harder to quantify, but it's really important. I've heard various stories from other, funds of, oh, well, our 401k plan blew up because we didn't administer it the right way. So, a bunch of people had to get checks, and, oh, our withholdings weren't correct on our bonuses. So a bunch of people had to write big tax bills, and everybody's mad at our CFO. Um, you know, these are really, really complex areas. When I first sat down with Diana McDonough, I'm really dating myself, but back in 2006, and she ran me through a laundry list of questions that I had no answers to. And I remember coming out of that meeting just being like, wow, this is my first time as a CFO, and I think I might be in a little bit over my head, because I understood, coming from a prime brokerage and fund accounting role. I understood portfolio analytics. I understood, fund financials. But the management company side was just a completely different world that was brand new to me. So being able, again, to avoid those type of mistakes are really important. And then I think just the trust, like being able to really sit there and, like I said before, never looking your partners in the eye and say, well, you guys trust me. Being able to say, no, don't trust me. Here's the system that I built for you. It's a robust system that gives us complete controls, and you should have total faith, that every day, anything flowing through your management company, you can see, you have full transparency to. And if you ever have any question, you can call an independent group. You can call Consero and you can talk to them directly. That's another one that's hard to quantify, but I do view, especially now, it's interesting because, again, I came from a fund with 16 years. So you had established relationships, and now it's, newer relationships. And that trust is huge. I think everyone agrees that, if you don't have trust in these types of roles, in your COO, CFO, whatever, any type of O type of position, if you don't have trust of your partners, you're probably not going to last too long in that role.
So important. Well, Brian, thank you again for your time today. It's been really a pleasure sharing insights into our partnership. I truly appreciate the strong collaboration we've built with Delta Global, and I look forward to continuing to grow with you.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me, and have a great day, guys.